So we just saw in our last video how to complete the square. So let's put that to some practical use. We're going to solve a quadratic equation by completing the square, by using that process. So we have, well, how can you solve 0 equals x squared minus 2x plus 3 by completing the square? So first, I'm going to flip this around. I personally prefer the x squared minus 2x plus 3 to be on the left side of my equation. So I'm just going to rewrite x squared minus 2x plus 3, and I'm going to put the equal 0 on the right. All right, we are solving by completing the square, which means that this is not something we can factor. Are there factors of a positive 3 that add up to negative 2? And if you go through all your factor pairs, there's not. So when we complete the square, whatever this c value is that we can't use with our factoring, we want to get that to the other side of the equation. So our first step is we're going to subtract 3. I'm going to rewrite x squared minus 2x. I'm actually going to leave an open space right here because we're going to add in something that will make this a perfect square trinomial. So I'm just going to leave my equal sign there, and 0 minus 3 is negative 3. So what can we add in right here to get a perfect square trinomial? To get that perfect square trinomial, we just take our b value, which is negative 2, and we divide it by 2 and square it. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is a positive 1. So we're going to add in a positive 1 right there. This is a perfect square trinomial. There are factors of 1 that will add up to a negative 2. We'll talk about those in a second. I can't forget, because we just added 1 to the left side of our equation to keep it balanced, add 1 to the right side of your equation. All right, so back to our perfect square trinomial. What are factors of positive 1 that add up to a negative 2? So factors of a positive number could both be positive or they can both be negative. Because we have to get those to add up to a negative 2, those factors are negative 1 and negative 1. And because it was a negative 1 2 different times, we can just write it once with a squared. These perfect square trinomials, the factors will always be the same number twice. So this perfect square trinomial will always look like that. All right, so equals negative 3 plus 2 plus 1 is negative 2. All right, so let's solve. We're going to square root both sides. The square root cancels the square, leaving us with that x minus 1 equals. Now, because we just square rooted both sides of an equation, plus or minus, we get two answers. And then square root of negative 2. In our last lesson, we learned how to bypass square rooting negative numbers. We're going to bring in I, and now it's the square root of a positive 2. And we can keep solving. Let's go back to our x. X minus 1, opposite of subtracting 1, is to add 1 to both sides. That cancels, so we get x equals. Now this positive 1 is not a like term with the I root 2. So I'm going to write the 1 first, then the plus or minus I root 2. So we have solved for x. Our solutions, we have 2 of them. I'll go ahead and write them both out so we just kind of understand what we ended up with. Our solutions are 1 plus I root 2 and 1 minus I root 2. So if you remember, that plus or minus is representing 2 different solutions, and here's what that would look like if we separated those.